All right, Taika, thank you so much for meeting with us today.
Hi.
Big fan. I loved Eagle versus Shark. Loved the Concords.
Oh, awesome.
Loved Boy. Thought they're all great. Boy was conceived as your short film that was nominated for the Oscar, Two Cars, One Night. And I wondered how you developed the script out of that idea.
Well, the script came from this. Can you capture my voice?
Yeah, it'll get you.
So the script I wrote in 2005, and it was sort of around beginning of 2005. I went to the Sundance Lab with it, and I don't know if you know about that experience, but it's basically like just a bunch of writers who have all done like varying types of scripts, you know, from like action films to arty-farty films and to, you know, this and that. And they all have completely differing and conflicting opinions on your story, and they all let you know that. And then at the end of the process, you're thoroughly confused and you have absolutely no idea what to do with your screenplay. So that's what happened to me, and I just put it aside for a year and a half and went off and made Eagle versus Shark. And I felt like, at the time, I thought, well, I really care about this film. I care about, you know, getting it right. Because there's something a little deeper underneath it all than you know, what I was used to doing. And I really wanted to like respect that and get the film right. So I went off and learned how to make a feature film with Eagle versus Shark, and then I came back after that, and you know, and then I'd learned a bit on the other film, and rewrote this a couple of times, and I think about like 8 or 9 months later, then started shooting it, and that's, you know, and leapt into it. We went and shot in my hometown, at my grandmother's house, and at my school, and just used like a lot of like local kids, and basically the whole community got behind me and like, you know, helped me out because like they're all my relatives, and so so it's a really beautiful experience doing that.
Cool. When you did Two Cars, One Night, did you think it could be a feature film, or were you just thinking it was going to be a short?
At the time, I'd never thought it was going to be a feature. I made it, and then what usually happens is, you know, you get encouraged to write a feature after you do a short film, especially one that does well. And so the film commission had said, you know, well, you know, we're in the business of developing talent, so you know, you should think about writing a feature film. And so, you know, and the natural progression after a short film is just to make the feature version of it. You know, that's what happened with Bottle Rocket, and what else? I mean, you know, so many films. And so that was that's why, and this was my first screenplay that I'd ever written.
Right.
So I'd done that for short film, and then started writing this.
Cool.
And so it's not exactly. I mean, it's sort of an extension of the short, but more just inspired by the short. I guess. Yeah.
Sweet. Boy has a lot of references to American pop culture.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson, E.T., you named Boy's friends, Dallas and Dynasty and Falcon Crest, and I just wondered about the influence of American pop culture on you growing up in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, you know, we had all those TV shows, and Knight Rider, and, you know, Dukes of Hazzard, and the Hulk, and so, you know, I grew up with all of that stuff. You know, even the kids shows, we had the same ones as you guys: Sesame Street, Electric Company, and so, yeah, having that steady diet of American TV show, and also British stuff as well. I think it was like about 50-50. You know, watched all the great British comedies as well, and I think having both of those types of comedy and types of drama, I think it sort of informed us more as, you know, in terms of our writing and the kind of stories we wanted to tell. It became a sort of mixture of those, you know, of those styles. You know, like America's got such a knack for drama and for, you know, like for narrative as well, and you know, and all those movies that we grew up with, you know, like E.T. and Back to the Future, and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and of course the Star Wars films. I mean, the 80s was such an inventive time for film. You know, it's like really inspiring to grow up in that time, because like kids' movies were amazing. Like Ghostbusters is like one of the most amazing films ever made. You know, and that felt like, you know, to be 10 or 11, that film to come out, and you're like, wow, people made this, and like kids can see this, and like this, and you think about the films nowadays, the only people who are really doing stuff that like kids and adults love, something like people like Pixar, who do very smart films, but there's not many people who are doing films which are just not literally just stupid films, like kids are treated like they're idiots these days. I feel,
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's like when you think about how trippy the Electric Company is, all those 70s dudes and all those crazy, like they put in those weird like Eastern Bloc animations into the shows. It's
Right.
probably because it was just really cheap to get their hands on, and they put a bit of jazz music behind it. And I mean, growing up with that stuff is just it makes you so much more inventive, and like, that's why I love that sort of animation. I love stuff that feels like you can feel the human hand behind it. Like someone actually made that shit instead of just pushing render.
Right.
So the 80s and all of the American shows and everything that the pop culture had a huge effect on us. And of course Michael Jackson, who was our huge hero, and at the time, like anyone who was black was really a hero who who was doing well for themselves, black or brown, and so we really adopted and embraced people like Michael Jackson and Bob Marley, Prince. And like, I remember like riding around on my BMX with my white friend, and we'd play chips, and like he'd be John and I'd be Punch,
Right.
which was cool. Like Punch was the cool one, he was the one who got all
was.
the girls, and he looked better, and he was the slick guy, and John was the sort of nerdy blonde dude. And
Yeah.
So it was just.
White dudes are always the nerds.
But at the time, when I think we were first playing, I was like, man, why do I have to be around? Like sometimes you're like, man. This is,
Right.
But then later you realize, oh no, that was the cool. He was the cool one.
Cool.
Yeah.
I thought that, I think rather that our generation, kind of more than any other, is really obsessed with nostalgia, and I think it was reflected in the Oscars this year, especially with The Artist and Hugo and Midnight in Paris, all kind of based around nostalgia. And you based the movie in 1984, and I just wondered if you were aware of that kind of tribute to nostalgia, or is that something that you're thinking about when you're writing the script?
I don't consciously think about it. With this film, I did want it to be in the 80s because it was just, I wanted Michael Jackson to be in the film for them to idolize him, and
Right.
And it had to be in the 80s.
Right.
So
Definitely.
kind of a film about kids idolizing Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Set in 2010. So mind you, it actually would have had a cool slant. That would have been quite funny.
Yeah, maybe.
And then, but usually no. I mean, usually what I do is I try not to set anything in any real time. Like Eagle vs. Shark could really be set anywhere between 1989 and 2005.
Yeah.
I purposely try and put technology in that's already obsolete. So like the computer that Jared's friend uses is like a sort of 1993
Yeah.
PC, which is like clunky and it's like makes a lot of noise.
Totally.
And you can hear the hard drives like just banging around inside it.
Yeah.
And also like if you put in like if you put this into a film now today,
Yeah.
in a year it's gonna look like people are gonna be like, oh, they had that version of the
Exactly.
iPhone, like how lame,
Yeah.
So you may as well just use like a big chunky brick phone because at least that's saying something, It's like, well, I know this is obsolete.
Right.
Yeah, and you can't really put it in any year. So yeah.
Cool. The film really reminded me of Napoleon Dynamite and Bottle Rocket and Slumdog Millionaire also, and just wondered who your influences are as a writer and director.
Well, I feel like my main influences have been actually like people who, like film-wise, films like The Graduate, 400 Blows. I mean, Truffaut is like absolute huge influence.
That definitely shows up too.
And even the opening of the film is basically copying the opening of Jules and Jim.
Yeah.
And then like and then there's other Hal Ashby. I'm a huge fan of his anything that he did, like I'm just hugely obsessed by.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's all I guess the film greats. You know, there's people who really, yeah, they've really kind of paved the way for a new generation of filmmakers by stylistically doing stuff that was, you know, that didn't date, and you know, and yeah, it was just interesting. But also, like even a film like The Graduate, which I consider one of the most perfect films, and that, you know, that thing is just like, it's a comedy but also a drama, and it's like, I mean, like that is the sort of tone that I love, which is why I guess I've tried to do it in my films as well. It's just bordering on that thing of like, you know, of amazing characters who are funny and, you know, who in great dialogue, but also there's a deeper thing underneath it. It means something, and it's like got, you know, like there's some real messages underneath, you know, the story, and yeah, you know, those filmmakers.
What are your favorite movies, or were growing up, anyways?
Well, growing up are different now to the ones that are my favourites, but growing up, any of the, you know, all the John Hughes films, and I mean, The Breakfast Club was, you know, one of my favourites.
Yeah.
All those 80s films, you know, like I'll just name a few, but yeah, like yeah, all the Star Wars films, especially Empire Strikes Back, Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, even things like Enemy Mine. I mean, that film. That's
I do, yeah.
film.
Lewis Gossett.
Enemy Mine. What's one they did the prequel to? Oh, The Thing. Probably the greatest horrors of all time.
Yeah.
And yeah, all those space movies. You know, there's a whole slew of space, like The Last Starfighter, The Last Dragon, the Kung Fu one. Yeah, just, you know, all of these sort of these really imaginative films that came out where, you know, like, and a lot of those films were just, you know, like centered around a young protagonist who was like having his world flipped upside down by, whoa, this guy's built a time machine, you know, or like, whoa, these people come from outer space, and I mean, how cool is The Last Starfighter that, just, yeah, that a video game is actually like a training thing, like to train people how to like fly these spaceships, and that's such a great idea.
I know.
I don't know how many kids went out and started just playing Space Invaders like obsessively after that, hoping that they'd be picked up from an alien. Yeah. Yeah. And then later on in life, you know, I got way more interested in foreign films, and yeah, some of my other favourite films. I get 400 Blows, Jules and Jim, Akira. Then, I mean, anything by Tarkovsky, Tokyo Story. It's got many classics. I guess all of the films that most filmmakers, or, you know, people who say they love film, you know, probably love.
Right.
And there's a reason they're all on the, you know, the best 100 list, and it's because they are really good films.
Right. Cool.
Badlands and Days of Heaven.
Yeah.
Two of the greatest films ever made. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. Last question was, I know you're kind of a Renaissance man, you love painting, and I wondered if you could paint one person in the nude, who would it be? Not counting Jermaine.
Not counting Jermaine. Yeah, neither Jermaine nor Brett. I think I would love to have painted Abe Lincoln in the nude.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because the beard would offset everything. It was just, you know.
Totally.
Just reclining.
Yeah, we might get to see it with Day-Lewis this year.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah,
should he's be playing him?
Yeah.
Shit.
Spielberg movie.
It doesn't end pretty.
No, it does not.
I can tell you that. Spoiler alert.
All right, Taika. Thanks so much for talking with us today. Appreciate it.